దీన్ని స్విచ్ ఏది మరి దీనికి దీనికి స్విచ్ అక్కడ పైన ఉందా? ఇలారా నాని, వాల్యూమ్ సరి చేయి. మధ్యలోకి పెట్టు. Okay. So, well, very good morning, guys. Yeah. So last day we just been completed up our discussions talking on model first, right? What is that? NT framework is completed. Yeah, we just completed NT framework. Finally, the last example, what we say is model first. Okay. edu.net. Oh, sorry. The last thing what we discussed is edu.net. So database programming is completely completed. Okay. Yeah, we are about to start filters. So filters. What are these filters? What a filter is, actually, these filters are basically used for injecting. They're actually used for injecting some code, injecting some logic. They're used for injecting some logic before and after the execution of an action method, or before and after the execution of an action result. So what exactly does it mean? See, you're getting a request to an action method. You're getting a request to an action method. So before processing that action method, I want to verify whether the user is authenticated to access this method or not. Whether the user is authenticated to access this method or not. Authenticated. What is authentication? Ray, in SQL Server you learned, see, when you want to connect to SQL Server, you should be authenticated first by giving your credentials. That is called authentication. Authentication is a process of verifying the user credentials, whether the connected user is authorized or not. Sorry, authenticated or not. Okay, so authentication is a process which checks the user credentials, whether the connected user is authenticated to access this or not. So that's what we call as authentication. And the second thing here is authorization. What is authorization? Authorization means that comes after authentication. That comes after authentication. When authorization comes, the user is authenticated. Now the next thing what it verifies is whether the authenticated user is authorized to perform a task or not. What do you mean by that? What I mean is the user is authenticated, no doubt. The user is authenticated. But the question is he authorized? Is he authorized in the sense? Means every authenticated user is not authorized. For example, you take a clerk and a manager. Both of them have an access card to enter into the office. Both of them should show their access card and enter into the office. When you show your access card in the entrance, based on your access card, you will be allowed inside the office. Then you are authenticated. You are authenticated. Your access card is not available. You are not allowed to enter into the office now. Now, one thing. Manager, clerk, both are authenticated. But who can sign on the company checkbook? Only a manager can sign on the company checkbook. A clerk cannot sign on the company checkbook. Am I correct? So that is called as authorization. Means all authenticated users are not authorized to perform all the actions. First, authentication. Next, authorization. So first, authentication verifies whether the user is a valid user or not. Authorization verifies whether this valid user is having permissions to perform an action or not. Are you getting me? See, clerk is also authenticated, but doesn't mean that clerk can sign on the company checkbook now. Right? Who can sign? A manager can sign on the company checkbook. A clerk cannot sign on the company checkbook. That's called as authorization. Authorization is the process to verify the credentials of the user. Sorry, authentication is the process of verifying the credentials of a user. And authorization is a process of verifying whether the authenticated user is having permissions to perform a task. But remember, all these actions should be done before the execution of an action method or after the execution of an action method. Before the execution, that's what filters. What a filter will do, filter will be executing a piece of logic. Some logic will be executed by the filter in 4 different scenarios: before the execution of an action method, and sometimes after the execution. It's not only about authentication authorization, a lot of other things also. So filters are some logic that executes before the execution of an action method as well as after the execution of action method. Means 2 scenarios: 1 before the execution of action method, 2 after the execution of action method. And again, before the execution of an action result and after the execution of an action result means view processing. Action result means view result, partial view result, all this comes under action results now. Before the execution of an action result and after the execution of a action result means you can induce some extra logic. You can induce some extra logic. Some extra logic can be induced into your action methods. Means 2 scenarios: before the execution and after the execution of action method, as well as before the execution and after the execution of a action result. That's what exactly a filter is. Are you clear? We have different kinds of filters. We have different kinds of filters, and every filter is a class. Every filter is a class. You can use these filters now and you can induce some additional or extra logics. You can use these filters now and induce some extra logics into your applications now. That's what exactly the filters are all about. So yeah. In ASP.NET MVC, a user request is routed to an appropriate controller and action method, correct? A user request is routed to an appropriate controller and action method. However, there may be circumstances where you want to execute some logic before or after an action method execution or before or after an action result execution. You might have some logics here and the logic should be executed before or after the execution of an action method, in the same way before or after the execution of an action result also. And to achieve this, ASP.NET MVC provides filters. Filters are used to inject extra logic at different levels of MVC framework request processing pipeline. Request processing, understand the word correctly. Request processing. You send a request and the request is going to be processed. And that's called as a pipeline. Pipeline means, a pipeline, the water flows in a sequence. So is also we call it a pipeline. First action result. Afterwards, first action method. Afterwards action result. Next response. That's a flow. We call it a pipeline because pipeline which provides a way to cost-cutting concerns like logging, authorization, caching. All these actions can be done. What you can do? We can do logging actions. We can do authorization actions. We can do caching actions. All these things can be performed by using the filters. Initially, ASP.NET MVC framework supports 4 different types of filters. In the initial stages, we have 4 types of filters. What are the 4? Authorization filter. I already explained you about authorization to you. Next, action filters. Action filters mean these filters will execute before the execution of an action as well as or after the execution of an action. Same way, result filters. Result filters means again before the execution of a result, action result, or after the execution of a action result. Exception filters. Exception filters mean these filters will come into action only when there is an exception in the application. Only when there is a exception in the application. Whereas authentication filters are introduced with ASP.NET MVC5. So right now we have 5 filters. First, authorization filter, action filter, result filter, exception filter, and MVC5 introduced you authentication filter also. Okay, and each filter allows us to introduce logic at different points during the request processing pipeline. So basically what it will be allowing you, introduce logic at different points during the request processing pipeline. During the request processing pipeline, you can introduce extra logic. In MVC, filters are classes. I already said you, every filter is a class. And actually these classes will implement some interfaces. And these classes are going to implement some interfaces. In the following table list the filter types and interfaces which are implemented. The first filter is authentication filter. The first filter is authentication filter. And this authentication filter implements authentication filter interface. The authentication, see, every filter is a class. So authentication filter is a class now. And this class is going to implement an interface. What is the interface? Authentication filter. And see, these filters run before any action filters run or action method executes. What is the meaning of it? Understand, these filters run before any other filters or action method executes. Means simply speaking, they are the first one to run. First authentication should be done here. Afterwards only the rest of all the filters should execute, and afterwards only action method should execute. First filter is authentication. Second one, authorization filter. What is the authorization filter? Basically this implements the interface authorization filter. Authentication, authentication filter. Authorization, authorization filter. Same names only, guys. These filters run the next of authentication filter. When will they run? After authentication and before other filters and action methods. Means understand the sequence. First authentication filter, afterwards authorization filter. Then only it will go to action methods. Next one, action filters. As the name indicates, action filters. Implement what? action filters. When will they run? These filters run before and after an action method executes. Before an action method or after an action method. Same way, result filter. You can understand now. Result filter. When? Before an action result, after an action result. And the last one is exception. What is the exception? These filters run only if any filter or action method or result throws an exception. If there is any error only, these filters will be coming into action. Otherwise, these filters will never come into action. And if you observe it, all these particular filters will have the appropriate interfaces. Authentication. What is the interface? Authentication filter. Authorization. Authorization filter. Action. Action filter. Result. Result filter. Exception. Exception filter. All these are the classes and these are the interfaces. And here, as I explained you about all the things about authentication, authorization, action, result, exception, when exactly they are going to execute, all these things are listed for you at this place. Okay. And basically these are going to have a set of methods under them, and we can implement that particular methods. We can implement the appropriate methods to induce some extra logics. Okay. Actually speaking about this one, actually, all these filters are going to be some classes, as I said here. So to be clear, what I just wanted to tell is Microsoft already implemented these classes to us and given. Already they have implemented some set of classes to us and given. We can consume them, as well as we can also create our own filters. Two options are there. One, we have some existing filters which you can directly use them. Two, you can also implement your own filters. See, exception handling you learned in C# now. There are so many system exceptions that are implemented by Microsoft and given to you, which will come into action in the appropriate scenarios. Apart from that, they've given you another option. What is that? You can also go for implementing your own exception classes. You can also go for defining your own exception classes. Your own exception classes can also be defined, right? So exactly the same thing only. We have some existing filters already available. Consume them. Option 2, you can also implement these filters. So first let us go through existing filters and how to use them. And then we'll see how to define our own filters also. Both the two things we'll see. First let us go through the existing filters. List of predefined filters provided by ASP.NET MVC. First one, child action only. The first filter is child action only. Second filter is output cache. I'm not giving any description. I'll show you practically. I'm not giving any description, guys. I'll show you practically about each and every of the appropriate feature. Okay, what are those and how do we use them? I will show you in detail about this. Okay, next, validate input filter. What is it? Validate input filter. Next, validate anti-forgery token filter. Validate anti-forgery token filter. Next, handle error filter. Authorize filter. Allow anonymous filter. All these are the predefined filters that are provided by Microsoft to us. These filters are readily available. First, let us see how to work or how to use all these particular filters in our application. So once we are good about it, then we can just go for creating or defining our own filters and how to consume them. We'll just observe it. Am I clearer, everyone? Yes or not? So let us start with the child action only filter. Let's start with the child action only filter first. Okay, we'll just start with the child action only filter. So what is this child action only filter? Okay, I'll show you. To demonstrate all these particular filters, first I'm going to create a new project here. First I'm going to create a new table in the database here, in our MVCDB database. I'm going to create a new table in our MVCDB database. Meanwhile, let's also create a new query. MVCDB, creating a table. What is the table name? Customer, and see the columns. Customer ID, primary key, name, balance, city, status. You know this, default value 1, not null. After creating the table, the next thing what you'll do is insert some records into the table. Okay, you insert some records into the table. Hold on a second. I dumped some records into the table from a different database, that's all. Just a second, got hanged up. Yeah, I dumped some records here. Some 15 records I jumped. You insert them, you just insert those records. How I inserted is none of your business. You just insert some records into your tables. Fine, done. What next? Create a project. Create a project. I'm creating a empty ASP.NET web application. Empty. Naming it MVC filters. MVC 7. Create. We'll go with empty project. Yeah. Now let us add an ADO.NET entity data. Means let's go for a DB first. Add ADO.NET entity data model. Test entity framework. I'm going for a DB first and not code first. So you have designer from database, new connection, server, SA 123. What's the database? MVCDB. Click OK. Yes. And selecting the customer table what I created now, and the department and employee table what we have earlier. The department table, employee table. SQL Server. SQL closed up. Actually, let me see whether we have some proper data in EMP DEPT tables. Select star from DEPT. Department. Yeah, we have some records here. Oh, we have very less number of records here. We'll do one thing. Just a minute. I'll dump some records into this also. I just dumped some data into the tables. That's it. Again, y started from 1027. Hold on a second, please. Okay. I just dumped some records into the table. Say how I inserted is none of your business. You know how to insert the records, you do it. Okay. Yeah, 3 tables. What we selected? Department, employee, customer. All the 3 tables. Okay. Now let's add a home controller in our project. Home controller. Using MVC filters.models. Now I want to write a method, an action method. First, let me create the context class instance. What is the name of the context? MVCDB entities. Remember, in DB first, the name of the class is entities, not context. But inherits from DB context. That is same. But the class name is MVCDB entities. Okay. And yeah, public view result display departments. I want to write a method to display the departments. Return view and the view should display the department's data. So for that reason, I'm passing dc.departments to the view. I'm passing dc.departments to the view. Same like this, guys. I want to write another method, public view result display employees by department. Display employees by department. And for this, I'm passing department ID. And what I want to get here, I don't want to get all the employees now. I want to get the employees by the department. And you're passing a parameter, say department ID. If I pass 10, should show me the employees of 10. If I pass 20, it should show me the employees of 20. That's what exactly my requirement is. Is the point clear? So that's what exactly I wanted to show. So what will you write? A query now where not all employees. If all employees, dc.employees I can use, but not employees. We want only based on the department. Okay, where EMPS is equals to from E in dc dot employees, where E dot department ID is equals to department ID select T. So you're fetching only employees corresponding to the given department now. What next? Return view. EMPS. Okay. Return view EMPS. Like this, we just have the two methods that are defined for you here. Okay, let's create a view first. First for display departments, add view. Let us choose empty model department. Yeah, the view code I'll just copy paste. What should I write? I innumerable. Something wrong with my system today, not responding. Just a second. Okay. Same way. Let me add a view to this also. Add view. Empty. Employee. I innumerable. So the two action methods, what I have. So the first one is display departments. Display departments. So run, it will show you the department's information. Yeah, showing you the department's information. Same way, we have another method, display employees by department. And don't forget here, for this you're required to pass a parameter. What is the parameter? Department ID. So question mark, DID is equals to 10. Employees of 10. Same way, DID is equals to 20. Employees of 20. 30. Employees of 30. 40. Employees of 40. Are you clear? So basically my intention is, first we have display departments method, correct? In the display departments method, 10 marketing Mumbai is coming now. Here I want to add one more column. In the fourth column, it has to show me the employees of 10. Array, 10 has multiple employees now. It has to show me the employees of 10. How many employees are present in 10? It has to show me all the employees of the 10 now. How, sir, how can you do that? Array, possibly here. See here? Watch it. This is I add a new column. What is the column? Employees. Okay, and here the corresponding employees has to come now, right? You can call an action method, html.action. Which method? And for that I'm passing a parameter, route value. What is the route value? Department.department ID. So now you guys observe this now. If I run this along with the department, the corresponding employees information also will come for me. Watch. Are you clear? The corresponding employees information is also coming for me in this case. Just a minute. This display employees by department. I'm using a what is that? Layout is equals to null. Nothing. This also has a layout. That's why it is showing you application name and all. So I'm setting layout is equals to null here. You see now? 10. Marketing, Mumbai, employees of 10. 20. Sales, Chennai, employees of 20. Same with 30, 40. Are you guys clearer? Yes or not? Like this, we have just been showing you the appropriate information in this fashion. Okay now? Okay, you want to give some styling, use some bootstrap and do some stylings and all the things here for that. But you're just going to get up the information corresponding to the appropriate employees. What employees of the corresponding employees information is coming up and showing for you here. Is this clearer, everyone? Yes or not? Now, guys, I did not show you any filter till now or nothing. I just written normal code, that's all. A regular code only. Now I'm showing you a filter. What is the filter? Can I access this employee's data individually or not? Yes or not? How? Display EMPS by department and passing the department ID value as 10 or 20 or 30 or 40, it will come now. See, 10, 20, 30, already shown you. But I don't want this view to be accessible directly. I don't want this view to be accessible directly. Directly, I don't want to give a permission to access this view. Means this view should come only as a child. This view should come only as a child, not directed. Means a direct access to this view should not be given now. I want this view to be only a child to the display departments. I don't want this to be directly accessible. Okay? If that is the case, we use our first filter. What is the filter? Sorry guys, I scrolled off very up. The filter is child action only. That is the first filter what we just have. What is the filter name? Child action only. That is the filter what we're just going to use. Watch guys. Child action only. How to use the filter? How to use a filter? Go to your action method and on the top of the action method you can use child action only. That's how you will apply a filter. That is how you are going to apply a filter. Child action only. When you apply this filter on this now, try to run display EMPS by DEPT now. This filter comes into action before the execution of an action method. Understand here, before the execution of a action method, the filter comes into action and see now it is restricting the access to the method, telling you the action display employees is accessible only by a child request. A direct request is not possible. Only by a child request you can. How you can use display departments? Now display departments is your calling and that is entirely calling display EMPS by device. So that is becoming a child action and see now you get the data now. Are you clear? Now when did the filter come into place? Before the execution of a action method. Did you catch my point? What is that? Before the execution of a action method, that filter came into action. So that is what we call as a child action. So this came into picture before the execution of an action method. So this is a before action filter. This is a, see basically you can classify them into 5 types here. Before action, after action, before result, after result, exception. Exception, that is when exception occurs. Otherwise, before action, after action, before result, after result. Fifth option, exception. I hope I am clear with the first filter. Non-action attribute. How can you achieve? Try Sai Kumar. Non-action cannot be called as a child also. Nah. When you say non-action, that cannot be called as a child also. You cannot. Okay. So this is our first filter. What is the first one? Child action only. Child action only filter. The next filter, what is the next filter? Output cache filter. What is the restriction with the DID? I don't understand. Sir, if it execute before action, then how did we get DID? Where, yeah? Where there? What's your question? Sir, if it execute before action, then how did we get DID? What did you understand first? Tell me. What did I say? This will not execute. Huh? I said you cannot directly call it as a child. You cannot make a direct call. You can make it only as a child call. To load employee by department, we need department ID, this department ID. This department ID is coming from department table, not from employee table. Understand that first. Department ID is coming from which table? Department table, not from employee table. First you understand that. Are you clear? DID comes from department, not from employee. Yeah. This is the first filter what we have. The second filter is output cache filter. What is the output cache filter? This filter, guys, this is a after result filter. This is a after result filter. What do you mean by that? Means after processing the result, this filter will come into picture. Now current filter, what I saw? What we saw? Child action only. This is a before action filter. It is a before action filter. Now what I'm telling you, output cache. This is a after result filter. Means after the result is generated, then this filter comes into picture. Did you catch my point? Okay. So what are the four classifications I said here? Before action. Second, after action. Next, before result. Next, after result. Last one, exception. Or simply I can say one exception. This is the correct way. So the first one what I shown you is child action only. The child action only filter is a before action filter which will come into action before the execution of a action method now. And that method is not allowed to execute in a direct call. The method is allowed to execute as a child call. Now the next filter is output cache filter. That is a means action method called, action method execution completed, action result called, and action result generated the output. Everything is completed. Now the filter comes into picture. Which filter? Output cache filter. What is the use of the output cache filter? The output cache filter is used for caching the output of an action result. Caching the output of a action result. What do you mean by caching? Guys, there is a page and the page has a huge demand. There is a page and the page has a huge demand. Like lot of requests are coming to that page now. Like lot of requests coming to the page. Not like one or two requests here. Lot of requests are coming to that page. Per a second or per a minute. Per a minute, there are, per a second, there are 1,000 requests coming to the page. 1,000. Means per minute, 60,000 requests. And you know, in web application, for every request, the page gets reprocessed. For every request, you will go to action method. Action method executes. You will go to result. Result executes, generates the output, sends it. So 60,000 requests are coming to a page means, or for an action method means, the server will also reprocess it for 60,000 times. Did you get my point or not? 60,000 times. So where there will be a huge burden on the server. There will be a huge burden on the server. In this process here, server is loading the data from a database. Server is loading the data from a database. Now, for every request, connecting to database, loading the data, preparing the view, sending the result, it's time taking. And not only like time taking, reprocessing the same thing again and again will be a burden on the server, which may decrease of the performance of the servers. To avoid this particular problem, we have a concept called as caching. What is this caching? Caching means after generating the output of a page, the output of the page will be stored in the cache. The output of the page will be stored in the cache. You can store the output in the cache for some certain time period. Some 60 seconds or 5 minutes or 1 minute, your choice. You can store it like this. So what is the advantage of storing means, if you store the output in the cache, from then the next requests that are coming from the page, the server without reprocessing the page will give you the output which is stored in the cache memory. Means first request came here, I stored the output in the cache. The next 60 seconds, I will get 59,999 requests. For all those requests without reprocessing the page, the same cached output will be sent to the client now. Means you minimized it now, see? Earlier 60 seconds, how many times it processed? 60,000 times. Now, one time. Because I used the cache of 60 seconds, after 60 seconds, the output in the cache will be automatically deleted and will create you a new copy. Why, sir? Why to create? Because if there are changes in the database, if I send these cached copies to user, changes in the database will not be reflected back now. Am I correct? I stored a cache memory for 1 hour here. Meanwhile, a lot of changes are in the database and you will see old data, new data is not coming now. Browser basically has that particular habit of caching the pages. Browser will do, generally caching will be done by the browser. That's why sometimes when you're developing applications, you make changes, the changes may not be immediately shown in the browser to you. You're required to just close your browser, clear the cache and do all the appropriate stuff. Otherwise changes won't reflect sometimes. So putting it for a long time is danger. Why? Database changes will not be reflecting this. So that's why we can set some time period, some 30 seconds, 60 seconds. Suppose if I put a time period of 30 seconds, database has very frequent changes. So I put a time period of 10 seconds. So for every 10 seconds it will reprocess. But now also understand, for a minute it will process 6 times only now. Earlier 60,000, now 6 times. So you're minimizing 59,994 reprocessings by the server. Did you understand the advantage or not? That is called as caching. So we can cache the output now. But when caching comes into picture, after the result is generated, only caching can be done. Before the execution of an action method, can you do caching? When can you do caching? Result should be generated, then only caching can be done. Without generating the result, you cannot do caching basically. Am I right? So what should be done first? Result should be generated. After the generation of the result, then only caching can be applied. So how exactly can we do this? Let us see. Watch, guys. I'm now demonstrating about I will write a method without caching first. I will write a method without caching. Simple method, yeah, nothing is there. Display customer. What am I asking? DC not customer. So shows the customer data. No caching, nothing is area. Add a view. Add a view. Empty. Customer. IEnumerable. Okay. Created a view. Run. Array, there's no caching, nothing. But see, here in the first row, I add a column. H3 element. Request processed time. When the request got processed, I'm showing the time now. You know this? Date time dot now means the current time dot to string t. What this is basically date time will contain date and time values also, but I want only time. I want only time. If I say D, I'll get only D. Basically, you can use uppercase D. It'll give you a long date. Means the weekday, month and all. If I simply say lowercase d, date will come DDMMYYYY. Time, uppercase T, hours, minutes, seconds. Lowercase t, hours, minutes. Try them. Uppercase D, lowercase d, uppercase T, lowercase t. Okay, what I used uppercase T. So what it will show you? Hours, minutes, seconds. All the things will be shown. Okay, run the page. Now, did I use any caching? No, I did not use any caching. Because I did not use caching, all of you observe, if I refresh the page, the process time is changing. Observe it. This is an indication to tell what every time the request is coming to the server is reprocessing your request. Did you understand my point here? Every time the request is coming to the server, what is the server doing? The server is reprocessing the request. I am doing from one machine. Now understand here, web applications means tomorrow millions of people will be connecting to the server from different places and will be requesting now. Means for every request the server will reprocess now. Are you clearer or not? For every request the server will reprocess. I shown only time here. Why you are asking for a date? Why you want date? Time is important for us now. If you want date, don't use a two string. By default, it will show you date and time, everything to you. I want only time and I pick a time. Are you clearer? Okay, so this is going to be process the page every time. Now I'll show you caching. Watch. Same method again. I'll say 2. Okay, just a minute. Add a view. Add view. And guys, in this, I'm copying the same thing what you have in the previous view. Same copy paste here. As it is, copy pasting. Alright, now if I execute, I'll get the same output only because you did not do anything except the same what you have done in the previous example. But what is your requirement now? Now your requirement is to use caching. Now your requirement to use caching. Okay. So how do we use this? Watch. Output cache is the filter. For this, you're required to pass some extra attribute values. What are the extra attribute values? First one, duration is equals to, tell the duration how much time you want this cache to be applied. Tell the duration how much time this cache has to be applied. I'm giving 45. Duration is equals to 45. I done for which method? Display customers 2. Come on, let's run display customers 2 now. 8:35:18 is the time, correct? I'm refreshing the page. The time is not changing, check it out. Page is getting refreshed. If you want, see here. When will the time change, sir? 8:36:3. 8:36:3 is the when the page, the time will be changing. Exactly at 8:36, no, not like that. At 8:36:3, the cached output will be destroyed. At 8:36:3, the cached output will be destroyed because 45 seconds. Afterwards, when the next request comes, a recache copy will be created. Okay? Guys, 8:36:3 would be completed, means the cached output is destroyed. Now I'm sending a request. Because I'm sending a request now, a new copy is created. And this copy will stay in the memory till 8:37. 8:37. Because 8:36:15 it is created. Means until 8:37, the same copy should be coming for us. See now, I'm refreshing. It's not changing. Once the time becomes 8:37, then automatically this copy gets destroyed. And afterwards, when the next request comes, a new copy. Don't think like exactly at 8:37 new copy will be created. No. At 8:37, the existing copy gets flushed out. It is flushed out. Understood meaning? Or you are flushing out means it is sent out of the memory. Afterwards, if a request comes, when will the request comes? Then see 8:37 completed. Old copy destroyed. So refresh. See now. My request went at 8:37:7 and the copy got created. Did you understand now? Okay. See, copy this one. All of you observe this. Let me copy the URL. I will open a new browser. I'm opening Google Chrome and trying to access the page. Have you noticed? 8:37:7. If this copy got deleted, then only a new copy gets created. Still the time is not done. Yeah, done guys. 8:37:54. So clear now? All are getting access to same page only now. Understood? So this can be from, this can be, actually I want the cache copy for this client only. Another client, another cache copy should be created. See, this client is opening 3 browsers here. In all the 3 browsers, I want to show the same output now. I want this cache copy only for this client only. Do you understand me or not? For this client only, I want this cache copy. If you want this cache copy for this client only, actually there's an option called as the location attribute where you want this cache to be created. The location attribute where the cache to be created. If I say location as client, the cache copy will be created on the client place. So the client opens 10 varieties of browsers. this client will get the same time, but not for other clients, not for other clients. But if I say location as a server, then it applies to all. Basically, the location has different attribute values, guys. Client, server, proxy, like this, we just have different options. I'll tell you. Okay, are you clear with the duration attribute? Tell me. Duration is clear now? Location. Gets us as the location value, which is to be specified where the output must be cached. It takes an enum value, which can be server or client, downstream, proxy server, server and client, any and none. Default is any. If you don't specify it is any, server decides whether to cache it on the client or whether to cache it on the server. If I say none, none indicates don't cache. Means I used output cache attribute here. Caching comes into picture, but I don't want to cache. I used the output cache attribute here. Caching comes into picture. For some reasons, I want to stop caching now. Without deleting that, you can say none. Means don't cache. Next, server and client. Means the caching will be done both on the server side as well as client side also. Means client will have one cache copy. Server will have one cache copy. Now, downstream. What is this downstream? Actually, we have a concept called as load balancing. What is load balancing? Load balancing means it's a very important architecture what we adopt in the web applications here. We call it as a web form architecture. We call that as a web form architecture. What is that web form architecture? Basically, this is called as load balancing actually. So what exactly is that load balancing means? Listen. See, IRCTC website you saw. At morning 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock when the Tatkal reservation comes into action, the servers are going to be very busy. They won't respond for us at all. Correct? But do you think IRCTC web server has more load than a Google and a Facebook server? Tell me, is IRCTC having more load than a Google and a Facebook server? Google and Facebook are accessed throughout the world, but IRCTC is accessed only in India. Correct? But we never saw Google, Facebook servers getting hanged up like this. Yes or not? Because they have a load balancing mechanism. What the load balancing mechanism means? The applications are basically hosted on multiple servers. The same application will be hosted on multiple servers. Okay, and there will be a server called as a proxy. There will be a machine called as a proxy. Whenever a client request comes, the request first comes to the proxy, and the proxy will be redirecting to the server which is free. You go to a jewelry showroom here in a big city like Hyderabad. You have big jewelry showrooms. When you enter the jewelry showroom, in the entrance there will be a supervisor asking you, what do you want? You said you want some bangles or chains or something. When you say, immediately he will call a salesman and he will assist the salesman to you, and the salesman will be with you until you complete your purchase and leave. Yes or not? This salesman will not be just looking at another customer. He will be completely dedicated with you only until you leave the store. Yes, am I correct? So for every customer, one salesman is attached. Never there is a chance the same salesman is going to see two customers at any point of time in a jewelry showroom. Yes or not? He will not show you here at a time. He won't show. They're valuable. If someone steals something, there's a problem. So that's where one customer, one salesman. So now, what is it? The supervisor, how will do? Who is free? He will associate. If another customer comes, he'll call the next salesman like this. If all salesmen are filled, he will ask the customer to sit, sir. Sit, everyone is busy, so please sit. So understand, he is balancing the load without sending off multiple customers to each, and it is trying to balance. Are you clear? So exactly, the proxy is also like a supervisor. We call it the proxy. It's a supervisor. The request comes to the proxy. Proxy will see who is free and it will send the request to the server. Suppose 10 servers are there. First server, second server, third server, fourth. Like this, it will be distributing the load between all the servers now. That's called as load balancing. And we call this as a web form architecture. Google, go and Google what is web form architecture. You will get the pictures about the web form architecture. Client's request will come to proxy. Proxy will be redirecting to the different servers. Are you clear? So in such scenarios, cache copies are stored on the proxy, not on the server, not on the client. So client doesn't require to go to the server also. You go to proxy, proxy will give you a cache copy now. Understood? So did you understand all the options? What is this? Server, client, downstream means proxy server. Both server and client also. Any server decides, not in my control. None. None means no caching at all. Okay, you can use that attribute. How, sir? How can I use that attribute? See, basically, if you don't specify anything, server is deciding. But if you want to specify, you can put a comma here and you can just say location is equals to location dot server. It's a namespace here. System.web.ui is a namespace. Remove it. Using. I'm importing the namespace and I'm just using it. The cache copies are created on the server machine. Okay now? We have a few more attributes here. I'll show you tomorrow. Let's stop it. We'll meet tomorrow.